Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hassett, some have suggested that the compliance costs associated with the corporate income tax in America tends to rival the actual yield, the revenue yield to the government. Do you have any opinion on that matter?
Yeah, there are estimates, and I think that the CRS has probably talked about these too, but there are estimates, especially for the International Tax Code, that the compliance costs are enormous relative to the amount of revenue. And it's, relative to the kind of forces that are discussed in my testimony, sort of makes sense because, the companies can spend a lot of money on smart people who then help them locate the intellectual property in just the right place, and then they arrange, fully legal activity in a way that gets more money in the low tax place. And firms are really able to do that. There's a whisper number around town amongst tax planners that multinational tax rates are about 17% on foreign income. They're able to do that because they're moving all these parts around. So but the movement of the parts so in the end you spend a lot of money moving the stuff, and then the end result for the U.S. is that there's not much money left here.
It's also been suggested that corporations tend to pass downstream, so to speak, their costs, both their compliance costs and what they actually pay in corporate income taxes, such that individuals end up paying for those just in terms of higher prices for goods or higher prices for services in some instances, or perhaps they pay for it through diminished wages or diminished job opportunities. Do you share that view? Yeah,
the passing on to workers result is really powerful in the evidence that Aparna and I have looked at. In fact, we've looked at other tax rates too, when I say the result, it almost feels like I'm some radical left-winger, because the data seem to say that no matter what you try to tax, in the end it's the little guy who pays for it.
The 99%.
Yeah, in the sense that if you try to tax the capital, then they move it around, and then the wages go down, and you're hurting the little guy. And so it's basically all the taxes. The capital is very elastic, very movable, and the labor is not. And I think that sales tax, just about any kind of tax that you can think, is mostly being passed on to wages and to workers.
But I guess the difference is that when it's passed on to the workers or passed on to the consumer or whatever the case may be, it's veiled. It's more opaque. You can't really see what's happening.
And indeed, on that point, I had a piece in the Washington Post on tax day a couple of years ago, which we can send to your office, which I commend to you, that makes this even the direct point in kind of a chilling way, which is that Congress is really virtuous about redistribution with the income tax, and so they're always arguing about the top 1% of this, and and it's as if everyone in the Democratic Party on the Hill is the absolute defender of people who are in the bottom half of the income distribution. But that stops as soon as you stop talking about the income tax. And if you look at total taxes paid by Americans, then there's a lot less redistribution than you might think, but we tend to tax the little guys with taxes that are hard to attribute. So sales taxes, property taxes, gasoline taxes, cigarette taxes, you can imagine what the incidence of those would look like. I have a study where we sort of summed all those things up and found that pretty much everybody in the U.S. was paying about 30% of their income in taxes, even people relatively far down in the income distribution, and it was because the people, as you get down to poorer people, they're paying these taxes which aren't labeled rich and poor because they're indirect and hard to attribute.
Right, but when we're talking about income taxes, specifically federal income taxes, and most pointedly here, federal corporate income taxes, those do get passed on to the consumer
Sure.
and to the worker. So in a sense, would it be fair to say that, there are at least a couple of functions played by our tax system? First, that it's there to collect revenue for the government. Obviously, we need money to operate, but it should be there, I suppose, to communicate accurately to the public, to the electorate, to the voters, the cost of government, so that people will understand that there is a relationship between how much government we have and the economic well-being of an individual. Would you agree with me if I were to say that our tax system performs that second function very poorly and is perhaps even impeded in its ability to perform that second function by virtue of having a very significant corporate income tax?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would diminish rather than enhance the capacity of the tax system to perform that second function of communicating to the public what it costs.
Right. We have all these hidden taxes, all this hidden revenue, incidents that's poorly understood, and a public debate about taxes that's really far from the truth in so many ways. The tax system is so complex. I could finish with this. That you know, I have a PhD in tax economics. That's what I've been working on my whole life. I got many papers in tax journals. I will not do my own taxes. I will not do it. It's unthinkable for me to try to do it because they're just too complicated, and I know that if I mess it up, then they're going to come after me hard because I should have known better because I got a PhD in taxes. And so I'm too fearful to do my own taxes, and I think it's just a shame that our system has reached that point.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much. I see my time's expired.